Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're gonna be reviewing If/When by the Tea Club.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So I don't have a lot of favorite bits for this one, so I actually have only one favorite bit. So instead of just holding the frame in the background, I'm actually gonna do a circle in my room and then I'm gonna come back and we can start off this video. So enjoy. So the Tea Club are a band which formed in 2003 by the McGowan brothers, but they actually only started releasing albums in 2008. And the album we're looking at today is their latest release from 2019, and currently this is their last album. I just said the same thing in two different ways. And the Tea Club at their core is basically a crossover prog band. You can say that they're symphonic prog, you can say that they're folk prog, but honestly I heard so many influences on here. Most exclusively you can say I've heard a lot of punk and also indie, and honestly there's so many things in this type of music. I really like that, but to me at least it felt like they weren't really trying to create progressive music. They were just trying to create whatever they really wanted and not limit themselves to any rigid structures, and that had led to the creation of what is mostly sounding like prog. And doing some research about the band itself, I see that they don't really go out of the way in order to categorize themselves as prog. They just categorize them as whatever and they create whatever, and I like that mentality quite a lot. But seeing as this is a prog review channel, I'm gonna have to review them in some lens through which I look at progressive music mostly. So if my review seems a bit unfair, that's because I'm looking at their progressive side and how good is it on this album in particular. Now this album consists of 7 separate tracks. Now although they're quite different from one another, I feel like each track on its own is pretty unshifting, unchanging, and quite tame. And yes, I mean each and every track, even the last epic of 27 minutes. But we'll get to that later. But first let's start off with talking about what I personally believe to be the band's stronger suit. I believe that this band does its best when they don't really act as a band. Yes, I said that. I think that whenever there's a piece of music which only consists of one player and vocals, it's really all that you need, and that's what they do the best. And yeah, it is kind of underwhelming, but that's what I really like, and that's the reason also why the first track on this album is definitely one of my favorites, because it has only a singer, I believe to be one of the McGowan brothers. It might be Daniel, it might be Patrick, I'm not entirely sure, and they're singing and it's just lovely and I really like that. And you know, that's kind of unfortunate because honestly there's 5 members playing on this album, and I don't really understand how could they have managed to create a music which to me at least feels kind of underwhelming in a lot of senses. This album doesn't even have any real solos on here, and you know, it's not that I say that every piece of music should have a solo, but honestly with an album like this it really does need it. And there's some bits and pieces in this album where you feel like there's gonna be a grand solo but there just isn't, and honestly it's kind of disappointing. And you know, this is usually the part of the video where I say, oh, these guys, they're so talented, I can see so much potential in what they create, I just really hope that they'll do something which uses that potential. But no, this is not this part in the video. Honestly, I don't see a whole lot of potential in the way that they sound and the way that they play. I don't think there's so much hidden talent over here. I think that what they create is what they're basically able to create, and I was not totally impressed by it. And this became really clear listening to the grand epic at the end called Creature, which to me is kind of ironic because there's really nothing creature-like about this one. It's really kind of tame and simple, incredible. I couldn't really believe if you told me before this that you can create a 27-minute long piece that is very stale and very repetitive and, you know, unsurprising, but apparently you can, and that's what I discovered today, and honestly, it really is a lackluster. And you know, one thing that really stood out to me throughout this entire album was how much it was lacking one simple thing that I believe, at least personally, would have made all of this album a whole lot better to listen to, and that in particular is a female singer. It really brought into mind bands like Curved Air or Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros, both of them having a fantastic female singer which accompanies the folk rock melodies, and that really does everything well, and it sums up the music in a fantastic way, and I think this is what the Tea Club are actually missing. Of course, that and more ingenuity and innovation, but you know, that's just for a different day. So how is this music on here? Like, should you listen to this album if you of course don't know it quite yet? Well, the answer, it really depends. If you're one of those people who's listened to a ton of prog by now and everything's so dense and so heavy and you're looking for something lighter and less dense, this might be actually for you, because this album really takes a lighter, quieter, simpler approach to prog, and that's part of it being crossover prog. It's really understandable, and honestly it would really fit well if I had to just listen to this one in the background and not want to have anything too obtrusive playing in the background. And you know, as unimpressed as I was by this music, I'm not saying it's bad, it's actually pretty fine, but as I said in the disclaimer before I actually started reviewing, I'm looking at this one through the lens of prog, and this one really isn't all that progressive. It does do wonders to defining crossover prog, and I think that's a great thing about this one, which I really appreciate. It really gets you into the spirit of prog without actually taking you out of your comfort zone. So for anyone who's looking to get into prog and really likes folk music and rock music, I think this one would be a great entry point into the genre, and I can appreciate that highly. And you know, one day you're listening to the Tea Club, the next moment you're listening to Jethro Tull, and before you know it, you're knees deep into the Canterbury scene. So yeah, it's a cool album, but if there's one thing that's cooler than this album, it's this album's cover. What a freaking beautiful album cover this is. I love it so much. You can definitely tell right away that it's something more modern that was made after the 2010s. I don't know how I can describe it, but it just looks like something that's pretty much new and exciting and, you know, a part of the modern era. So I don't know if there's a lot to dissect about what's actually shown in this cover, but to me it looks like there's a girl who's submerged in some sort of flesh-eating acid, but instead of it being very grotesque like you might imagine from that description, it's actually quite bright and kind of relaxing in some way. It's some sort of a macabre acceptance of one's fate. And the drawing style is absolutely brilliant. I really love it. I can see a bunch of mixed mediums on here, but if I had to place my bet, I'd say that most of this is watercolor based. And it also makes a very nice use of the rule of thirds. If you don't know what that means, it basically means that you can divide the image up to 3/3, and then you can see what appears in each third. So the upper third has the face of her and the surface of the acid, then you have the middle third which has her body, and the lower third has her body decaying into a skeleton. The shade of yellow is also lovely. I really like the colors used on here, and honestly I think this is one of my favorite covers I've seen on this list so far. I don't really know what it has to do with the music directly, but honestly I wasn't really paying attention to any of the lyrics, so it might have something to do with that, but I am none the wiser. So this album was supposed to be a 7, but seeing as the grand epic at the end was a 6 out of 10 for me, I'd say that it has the most weight on this entire album, and thus the rating of this entire album as a whole is a 6 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Asylum by Cressida. Of course, I want to thank my lovely supporter over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Walnum. You are the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my About page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.